Hey guys, welcome back. This is a special bonus episode of Figure Out Your Life podcast. I am your host, Toya T, aka Dr. T, aka Toya T, PhD, aka I got 1,000 downloads of my podcast, aka the best friend that you didn't know that you needed, but you have. That will do the research for you so you don't have to. I am your girl. Welcome back, everybody. It's that time of year again. It is Halloween season. It's that time of year when people like to dress like their favorite superhero or TV character or sexy anything. Insert whatever profession. Sexy nurse, sexy nun, sexy firefighter. As they said in Mean Girls. And I love this line, Halloween is the one night a year when girls can dress like a total slut and no other girls can say anything about it. I mean, it's the same thing for guys too. It's pretty much when anyone can just fulfill their fantasies. But what I just don't understand is that there is always somebody that has to ruin it for everyone. And that there are some that actually treat Halloween like it is the purge. Like it's the one night out of the entire year that they get to engage in whatever like racist, cultural appropriating, stereotypical fuckery that they want to without any repercussions. And it's not just the colonizers or the white people engaging in this. Unfortunately, it's everybody. Everybody has the capacity to engage in cultural appropriation. Not just the colonizers, but us people of color. And you especially see this during Halloween. And it's just really sad that people can't recognize that people of color can also engage in cultural appropriation and also engage in perpetuating racism and racist stereotypes and racist ideals about another marginalized group. So this is where I come in. This is where I switch into Dr. T mode, give you the facts, give you the history, so that you're not out here looking like a complete ass for Halloween. And even if you already dressed up for Halloween, because I know some people celebrated last weekend, you should still be able to find some helpful tips in here for your future Halloween costumes, for any kind of costume party that you go to, or just in everyday life. Because cultural appropriation doesn't just happen once a year. Unfortunately, it can happen 365 days a year. And if it's a leap year, 366 days. And I don't want you to be doing none of that nonsense. We all have to be knowledgeable. We all have to be respectful. And that's why Dr. T is here to give you a fun and informative lesson about Halloween and cultural appropriation. So let's begin the conversation. Let's begin class. Okay, students, are you ready for Dr. T? Dr. T is here. Can you tell that I miss teaching? Gosh, I got to get back into this like soon. All right, so I'm going to start off, of course, with some definitions, particularly about Halloween and cultural appropriation. So those are the two major ones that you should know so that you are well informed before you decide to pick out a Halloween costume or to decide if someone's dress or attire or behavior is cultural appropriation. So Halloween in itself, and I got this from history.com. Halloween is a holiday celebrated each year on October 31st. The tradition originated with the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. Ooh. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor All Saints. Soon, All Saints' Day incorporated some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before was known as All Hallows' Eve, and later Halloween. Over time, Halloween evolved into a day of activities like trick-or-treating, carving jack-o'-lanterns, festive gatherings, donning costumes, and, of course, eating treats. So that is Halloween. That is the definition of Halloween. It started over in Europe. It was brought over to America and was popularized when the Irish immigrants came over to America, to escape the potato famine, and they brought some of their traditions with them, and Halloween was one of the ones that they helped to popularize. So that is where the whole celebration of Halloween came from. Now let's talk about cultural appropriation and how some people end up engaging in it intentionally and unintentionally. and how you can avoid it. So this definition that I found surprisingly came from Good Housekeeping. I guess if you've ever read that magazine, it's pretty much for like white moms. I swear to God, like suburban white moms. Think Martha Stewart. And I think it's interesting that someone decided that this was a good topic to write about. But I think it's fitting because if you paid attention to the news, you know that Megyn Kelly, you know, the one that used to work at Fox and then was harassed by the Fox CEO, and she left and had a big lawsuit and then moved over to CBS. And then she was fired or let go or asked to leave after she admitted that when she was growing up that she used to engage in blackface as a part of like Halloween and dressing up, and she didn't see any problem with engaging in blackface. Like full on was acting like it had absolutely no historical, cultural, or social or political significance as someone who was like a public figure or news reporter. But so maybe that's why they had it in Good Housekeeping. And so this is their definition, right? Cultural appropriation, also called cultural misappropriation, occurs when a person from one culture adopts the fashion, iconography, trends, or styles from another culture. Some of the most controversial and harmful examples of cultural appropriation happen when the culture being appropriated is one of a historically oppressed group. And I think you can already guess which groups I'm talking about. I'm going to give you 3 examples of common costumes that people like to wear that are racist in forms of cultural appropriation and privilege. And I know you guys are smart, so you should already know who these 3 groups are. And I'm going to give those examples soon. But first, all right, for those who haven't picked your costumes, all right, the one thing I want to make sure is that you don't take the easy route, like, you know, the last minute costumes. You haven't figured it out. You are going to a party, going to a bar, going somewhere, dressing up with your kids to take them trick-or-treating, and you're like, what the hell can I wear? One thing, do not, and I mean do not dress like any other person's culture. Just don't do it. It's racist. It's racist, and it's an act of privilege, mainly for the fact that not only does it lead to offensive and inaccurate and stereotypical portrayals of other people's culture, but is an act of appropriation in which someone who does not experience that oppression is able to play, quote unquote, play in like that person's culture and their experiences temporarily, and an exotic other without experience of any of the daily discriminations faced by other cultures. For example, if you decided, okay, I don't got a costume, so let me dress up like a Native American, or in this case, an Indian. Like that's how they usually put it on the, Party City or Spirit of Halloween packaging. You know, for that last minute, you're like going over there, you're like, oh my gosh, I need a costume. And you'll see plenty of them that has like sexy Indian or warrior chief or something. If you see that, don't pick it up. I know it's easy. Or you have some feathers at home and some beads and you're like, I'm just going to put some war paint on my face and I'm going to do that. And I'm telling you right now, no. Especially this sexy Indian costume or sexy Pocahontas. The reason why you should not do that is because it's offensive. One, it's racist, and it shows that you're very much unaware of the horrific rates of sexual violence against Native women that they face in this country and in Canada. So in North America, Native women are 2.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than other women living in the United States. Let me repeat that again. Native women, American Indian or First Nation women or Native American women are 2.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than other women living in the United States. And so if you are not a supporter of sexual violence against women, just don't dress up like the sexy Indian. It's disrespectful, and it is a sign that you are supportive or just blissfully ignorant about the real life experiences of Native women in North America. And I'm including US and Canada because it's the same. The rates are pretty much the same when talking about violence against First Nation women. So don't be an ass, put down that quote unquote Indian costume and just be a cat, be a ghost. Be something that you're not going to offend anybody and is cheap and simple. Trust me. And this leads me into what I was telling you about my top commonly worn offensive costumes to avoid this Halloween. And if you have not guessed, number one is the sexy Indian or warrior chief. And these are not in like any kind of ranking order. This is just like the first one that came up because it's probably the most common that I've seen people engage in, both colonizers or white people and those who have been colonized. It's interesting when those who have been colonized will engage in racist behavior towards another colonized group or another marginalized group. And this is particularly so for Native Americans. And I can get all up into the kind of experiences that they have. I taught it when I taught race about how they experience this legitimized racism. And I'm going to quickly tell you what that is. So, it's pretty much the idea that people kind of understand racism against like Black people because of the long history it has in America. So they know you can't wear blackface, you can't be talking about darkies, you can't say nigger, you can't do all this other stuff. But for some reason, there seems to be some kind of erasure of the things that are racist towards Native people. And maybe it's a part of the whole erasure of Native people in general, or the attempt to erase Native people and act like they're beings from the past or they no longer exist. And so legitimized racism, for example, is racism that people seem to be okay with or think is okay. So, for example, having a team like the Redskins and people not seeing any problem with having a team that is using a derogatory term that is used for Native Americans, that has a stereotypical image as its logo, and continues to keep this name and this logo and the whole idea of the Redskins going in the face of Native American people telling them, please, can you just change your logo? It's just a logo. I mean, this is a chance for the teams to make more money. You create new uniforms, and then you have the people who have been fans of the Washington, D.C., football team being forced to have to buy new jerseys. You would think in the land of capitalism that the owners would be interested in that, but no, they seem to be somewhat attached to this racist logo, despite it being something that offends or is racist towards a group. But this is a part of legitimized racism. The fact that last year, and I flamed him for that. Last year, and this is why I don't like Kevin Hart. Last year, Kevin Hart and his wife had a birthday party for their youngest son, his first birthday party, and they had a Cowboys and Indians party where they dressed up like cowboys and quote unquote Indians. And then when people said, hey, this is offensive, this is not cool, he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's just a party. It's not that serious. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Because if it was a darkies party, if it was a slave party, I think he mentioned that too. Like, I'm not going to be, coming after someone who decides to have a slave and master party. And I was like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like, that whoever gets caught having a slave and master party is definitely going to be losing their social standing. They're going to be losing money. They're going to lose their job. They're going to experience some kind of repercussions. I mean, remember when Paula Deen, butter, the online chef or TV chef, and folks found out that she freely used the word nigger, and that she also had like a slave and master party. Like, what happened to Paula Deen? Paula Deen lost her show. Paula Deen lost sponsorships. I don't even know where Paula Deen is right now, but she definitely is not being invited to Good Morning America to make some chicken with some butter, okay? So it doesn't make any sense why people think it's okay to dress up as Native Americans without any problems. And I just showed you an example of someone who is a person of color, Kevin Hart, who seemed to have thought that there was no problem with him and his wife having a Cowboys and Indians party for his child and posting it publicly, and then not even apologizing when people said, hey, this is offensive. Like, this is not people being sensitive. This is actual real racism. This is actually you engaging in the marginalization and dehumanization of another marginalized group. Like, what the hell? And it happened in the month of November, which is like ironic, mainly for the fact of the whole story of Thanksgiving, that fake story about the Pilgrims and the Indians, quote unquote. and how they helped, the settlers, survive the winter, and they introduced them to maize and turkey, and that's why we're supposed to be thankful, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's the irony of it was just too much for me. But definitely do not do that. And, for everyday life, do not wear Native American headdresses, feathers, and war bonnets, mainly because they have deep spiritual significance. So here's some facts about that. The wearing of feathers and war bonnets in Native communities is not a fashion choice. Okay, so they're not wearing it just to be cute, like you see people trying to do at Coachella. And I remember that there was one time Victoria's Secrets, which we already know is problematic, had one model wearing a Native American headdress or war bonnet as she walked down the catwalk in, like a panty and a thong. I mean, not a panty and a thong, that's the same thing. A bra, like a sparkly bra and a thong. Like, bitch, what does that have to do with the headdress? Like, the headdress has nothing to do with lingerie, and especially for the fact it's not a fashion statement. Eagle feathers are presented as symbols of honor and respect and have to be earned. Okay, earned. Some communities give them to children when they become adults through special ceremonies. Others present the feathers as a way of commemorating an act or an event of deep significance. War bonnets in itself, especially, are reserved for respected figures of power. And so you walking down the catwalk for Victoria's Secret's half booty ass naked is not you being a respected figure of power. Like, you're just selling some panties and some bras. The other issue is that war bonnets are reserved for men in Native communities. And nearly all those pictures that we see, as I just mentioned about the Victoria's Secrets model, are women sporting headdresses. So it's completely taken out of context, which makes it cultural appropriation and something that you cannot do. If you cannot say, oh, this war bonnet or this headdress comes from the Cherokee people and it is worn during, whatever ceremonies, and it is a sign of this, and you can actually identify what the feathers and the beads and the bells and all the kind of stuff that's on it, like what the significance is, then don't fucking wear it. Like, don't fucking wear it at all. It's like, for example, like, you wouldn't wear like your club clothes to church. I mean, some people do, but like, you wouldn't show up in a bikini to church, right? People can easily understand that, because that'd be disrespectful. That'd be completely disrespectful, and it's inappropriate. And so it's the same thing when you decide that you want to wear a Native American headdress, you want to, decide that you want to wear a war bonnet, you want to be wearing moccasins and fringe and have absolutely no idea what the connection is to the culture. You want to wear, and I'm going into a completely different culture, but you want to name your lingerie line or your shapewear line kimono, and kimonos aren't shapewear. Kimonos aren't used in that way. I'm talking to Kim Kardashian West, because she is the queen of cultural appropriation and she don't give a fuck. But I'm so happy that she wasn't able to use kimono, which is a Japanese word, a part of Japanese culture. It's the actual, the wrapping, it's a piece of clothing that is not associated with underwear. Just saying, it's not associated with making sure that your wiggly bits don't show underneath your bodycon dress. And this is a good place to address the excuses that people like to use when they're called out about cultural appropriation. So some of it is like, I just didn't know. And that's the appropriate response. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Or I'll look, I'm going to research it and learn more about the culture. But for those who want to be bold, wrong and strong in their ignorance and in their fuck a fool coon niggertry. Shout out to For It's Rocks on YouTube. I love that word when she uses it. But when people just want to be wrong and strong and say, I don't know what you're talking about, it's not appropriation, it's appreciation. And I'm telling you, no, it's not. It's not appreciation. And I'm going to pretty much help you be able to differentiate between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. So here is how you are able to express appreciation rather than appropriation. If you are able to understand the culture you're borrowing from, including its history of oppression and marginalization, then you're engaging in appreciation. Like, you're actually doing the full-on research. You understand what you're wearing, why you're wearing it, what its significance is, what kind of repercussions or reactions that people who are part of that culture when they wear it, what do they experience? It's interesting that that Native American clothing and headdresses have become so popular when in the past, and I'm not even in the far past, like I mean like in the lifetime of my grandmother, okay, she was born in the 1920s, that even during that time when they would pretty much remove Native American children from their families, from their tribes, from the reservations, and put them in the boarding schools to convert them over to Christianity, to Americanize them, to Westernize them. They would cut off their hair, even though their hair had, especially for the boys, they would cut off their hair, and it has like a significance to their religion, to their culture, to their tradition. They would cut off their hair. They would force them not to speak their native languages. They would keep them away from their families so that they would lose touch with their culture, which was in essence a way to kill Native American culture, to kill the Native American people, for these projects, and you can look up these Native American boarding schools that were all over the place until like, I think the 70s. So just ridiculousness, where they would change their names to like westernized names. So they'll become John, the whole idea of the project was to kill the Indian, as they would say, kill the Indian, and, develop the man, like develop like pretty much the white man. And so it's funny that in a society in America where they were trying to pretty much erase, to kill off Native American culture, that generations later people will come around and still want to be like wearing, Native American headdresses, the things that they pretty much took from the people and wanted to burn and tell them that it's savage and uncultured and all kinds of things, but then want to turn around and wear it to some expensive ass fucking music festival in the middle of the desert and be like, oh, it's so cute, it's so freeing, it's so spiritual. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, do you know the history? Do you know like what people have gone through to be able to continue to wear these headdresses, like how they had to fight for them to still exist, because the colonizers tried so hard to kill them off. Like, come on, pick up a history book. Pick up a history book, folks. So just don't do it. It's just, I can go on and on, but I'm not going to. I want to keep this. And in that vein of talking about cultural appreciation, I know some folks also use the excuse of like, well, culture can't be appropriated because no culture is completely original and uninfluenced. And, so you can't say that braids belong to, African-American people or people of African descent. You can't say, like, not even braids, cornrows, because braids very much can be found in different cultures. But cornrows, Fulani braids, kinky, not a kinky twist, Sinhalese twists, all these things are native to Africa. All these things come from African culture. And Bantu knots, these are things that you would find in African culture. So saying that there isn't some kind of connection, that people don't create their own, spin on something that, yes, is a regular thing like braiding, that they don't make their own spin and attach cultural significance to it. I mean, that is the creation of culture. That's what we have ethnic groups for. That's why ethnic groups are different from racial groups. Racial groups in itself was a creation to kind of separate people into different boxes based off of whatever the dominant group decided was the signifiers of the dominant race and the minority race. That is as quick as I can tell you about race. But ethnicity is about people who share a history, share a culture, share a language, share a religion, and they use that as a way to bond with each other. They pick up certain traits, certain traditions, and make that as a part of their culture and make that as a way to connect each other. So yes, you can find braids anywhere, but you're not going to find cornrows in Germany naturally, because one, the people that are native to Germany don't have hair that works with cornrows. And two, like, who was doing it? What is the purpose? What is the significance of it? Like, again, like, stop being ignorant. Yes, there is a place for discussion and interpretation when you're talking about, how to be influenced by certain cultures, how to, kind of take like bits and pieces, but still be respectful. But that is a whole nother conversation that I'm not ready to have right now. So let's move on to the second commonly worn, offensive Halloween costumes that you should avoid this year and forever. Anything in blackface. Like anything in blackface. Don't do it. Don't think about it. Blackface, brown face, just don't do it. Any costume that you want to do can be done without changing the color of your skin. You want to be Mr. T, you don't have to darken your skin, okay? Just get a bald head and put some hair on the side and put a lot of gold chains on you and talk about you pity the fool, okay? You pity the fool, you pity the fool. I can obviously see that you're Mr. T. Or if you want to be what is another one? Like I remember one of those like stupid girls, like what was it? Juliana Huff decided, like the dancing girl from was she on Dancing with the Stars? I can't remember. But she decided that she wanted to dress up like Crazy Eyes or Suzanne from Orange is the New Black and decided to put on blackface. And it's like, girl, you didn't have to. All you had to do was do the hair and wear the orange jumpsuit and, you know, do the mannerisms. Like we could tell, but you putting on blackface shows your ignorance and the fact that you don't even take the time to understand why this is bad. And it's not like, you know, some people will try to say like, oh, you know, racism is dead. And I said about Megyn Kelly saying like, well, you know, like everyone was doing it. And it's like, no. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's right. And especially where you're growing up, like if all the white people are doing it and you have no people of color, no black people in your community, you have no place for you to have someone tell you that it's offensive. So you just continue to think that it's okay, but it's not okay. And again, it also acts like you don't know that blackface is wrong. So blackface in itself is just as offensive as like hanging nooses around trees, which some people will try to act like that is not a racial attack against black people, and the history of lynching black people in this country isn't like, you know, recent and real and visceral and something that should be remembered and not repeated. But blackface in itself, blackface costumes seem to be the one that people love to do. So after the cheap Native American sexy Indian warrior chief costumes, blackface is like, you know, the ones that people like to engage in. And of course, usually blackface is usually never done. I don't think I've ever seen a black person engage in blackface like in modern times as a form of a Halloween costume. Although there has been instances where people's skin have been darkened to play a character that's darker than them. And we have a whole bunch of problems. I'm talking about Zoe Saldana when she played Nina Simone and they put on that fake nasty looking nose on her and then darkened her skin instead of just getting a dark skin actress who better looked like Nina Simone, or they could just left her ass alone. But again, it doesn't, like I said that it rarely happens, but it does. It can happen sometimes, and it's still problematic. Blackface is very much deeply rooted in racist history in the United States. It extends back to minstrel shows in which white actors would paint their faces black and lips red or white to mock the physical appearance of African Americans and perform grotesque comedy, quote unquote comedy, what they think is funny, like making fun of black people based on ideas that black people aren't human beings, that they are these creatures, that they are human, that they're subhuman, that they're animals. I mean, that is the whole justification for slavery. Like, you know, they're animals. They're 3/4 of a person, of a, you know, and so, or 3/5 of a person, sorry. And, you know, aren't deserving of human rights. And it's the same thing what they would do when they engaged in blackface. And particularly if you've ever watched the movie Birth of a Nation, the one that came out in the 1920s, not the one that came out with Nate Parker and Gabrielle Union, not that one. I'm talking about the one that was praising the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Like, you have to watch it. If you've ever taken a history of film class, like you would have to watch that class. I mean, watch that film. I watched it because I took an African American film class in graduate school, and it was a part of like the discussion of black characters or black figures black people being represented in film, and the originations, and like how it started off not even with black people playing black people, but with white people playing black people, and particularly portraying these images that have been long-standing of particularly African American men as violent, as rapists of white women, as, barbaric, as, being violent and deserving of being punished by the Ku Klux Klan. The whole point of the Birth of a Nation is to, say the Ku Klux Klan were the white knights that came to save America after the Yankees freed the slaves and turned the once happy, jovial, nice black man into this savage, lustful, rapist and murderer. So that is where it is steeped into, and it continues today. I just watched Survivor, the show, the TV show, and there was a conversation about race that happened on there, which made me kind of uncomfortable, because talking about race is uncomfortable, but it also made me uncomfortable because I was like, this is Survivor. And I know like the white audience that's watching this definitely needs to hear this conversation, but I I'm sure the producers were just like so happy, like, yes, we're being, culturally significant. We're being politically correct. As one of the black castmates had to school one of the white castmates that instead of saying the buffs, because they have like these headbands that they all get that say Survivor on it if you don't watch the show, and he said to the black guy, Jamal, like I can't remember the guy's name, so I'm just gonna do by race. So he said to the black guy, hey, can you use your do-rag to pick up the pot of rice that we have going? And the dude was like, you mean buff? Like every single person has a buff. Why did you say do-rag when I don't have a do-rag? And he was like, he was offended by it, and told the guy he was offended, and then schooled him on the fact that, white America seems to have this idea about black men, especially those who don't have a lot of black people in their areas. And it can be very dangerous. And the fact that you would associate a headband that everyone has, but you didn't say it to the white guy and say, hey, can you give me the do-rag? But when you saw me, you automatically use the word do-rag, which is very much tied to racist ideals, stereotypical ideas of black men being thugs and violent and drug dealers and, on welfare and, making children that they're not taking care of and all this, and being, people that are deserving of being imprisoned and being shot and killed by cops, even when they're unarmed. Like all of these things are very much, they have meaning. And the words you use do bring up images that are very tinged in race in this country. And so I appreciated that he said that, but it's the same thing. Like, what these things are, that the images that go out there, these perpetuating images, that they have long lasting effects on the people who are actually being misrepresented. And so, blackface in itself is something, black and brown face is something you should just avoid. Now, some of them were like, well, what about whiteface? We had white girls and like, the Wayans were wearing whiteface as they, portrayed two white girls and white girls. And it's like, they didn't look anything like white girls. 1, 2, it's a comedy. 3, it was offensive, but it was also just not even really funny when you look at it now. But 4, whiteface and blackface don't have the same history. Blackface is connected to a history of involving dehumanizing and disenfranchising black people. Not only does blackface depict violent and offensive racial stereotypes, it's an act committed by a group that both has and continues to wield disproportionate power and privilege, making it an act of dominance and superiority. That means that when you think about the significant disenfranchisement of people of color, particularly black people in this country, you cannot tell me that whiteface and blackface is the same thing. You can't tell me that the Wayans brothers dressing up as quote unquote white girls in this, god awful white makeup, that is the same thing as blackface. It is not. There is no power that people of color, particularly black people, have over white people. Like, they're not going to lose their lives over the images of these two black men dressed up as quote unquote white girls. But this is what happens when you have blackface happening. This is the enduring image of blackface. This is how we have gotten to a place where a white officer can be outside of a black woman's home and shoot her dead before even allowing her to even follow the directives that he was giving her. And I'm talking about Tatiana Jefferson. Like, the fact that we are seen as violent automatically, that even when we are legal gun owners and we're in a country where they say that you can bear arms, and the NRA is pretty much running our government, our political leaders, because they're putting money and lobbyists out there to change, to continue to have open gun laws, even when we have babies dying that are getting shot up for no damn fucking reason. Like, people didn't care when they killed kindergartners, in Sandy Hook. And so, but yet that's because it shows their power, that they're able to have things not change because of their power. And even when you have someone that says that it's a black person that has a gun that's registered, even then we're still considered a threat, even though, the American ideal is Americans should be able to bear arms and to protect themselves, and especially if you have a license. And in some places, you don't even fucking need a license. Like Texas, Atiana Jefferson, the cop saying that she had a gun, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, in Texas, you don't have to have a license to carry a gun. You don't even have to have a license to have a gun in your house. And so what you're talking about is not fear, but it's actually fear. It's not like you thinking that that you were legitimately, the white officer thinking that he was legitimately, his life was, threatened, but it was the fact that it was a black person that has a gun that he felt threatened. And where did that image of black people being violent and deserving of being shot first and then asking questions later? It comes from these enduring, perpetuating images of black people being violent. And where did these images come from? They have a history in blackface. Now, if you can give me the same thing and say about whiteface, then we can have a conversation. But you can't. You really can't. White people in America have never been persecuted for the color of their skin, nor have institutions been made and maintained to oppress and disenfranchise white Americans. And so the power dynamic is real. And that is the difference between whiteface and blackface. That is the difference. But in all cases, just don't do it. Don't put no makeup on your face to make yourself look like another group. You can still portray something without having to put makeup on your face to darken or lighten your skin. Number 3 on this, and this is maybe one that people would have thought of, but not really, and maybe not in the way that you're thinking about it. And so another one that people commonly like to dress up as is Mexicans, and especially because of the whole border issue and our immigration issues right now, and this whole narrative about undocumented immigrants and how most of them are Mexicans or people of Central American descent, but mostly Mexicans. That's the face that they put out there. I'm not saying that is true because, I'm an immigration scholar and I can tell you that it's not true, that all undocumented immigrants are not all Mexicans. And all Mexicans are not all undocumented immigrants, but a lot of people like to dress up as Mexicans. And you have like the ones, like there was a racist one that happened last year where a bunch of white teachers decided that at some school in I think Idaho or Iowa or someplace, that they were going to wear like sombreros and ponchos and these thick stereotypical Mexican mustaches, and then they held up a cardboard box that they built, that they created to look like a wall, and thought that was funny. Maybe you're thinking about that. Maybe you're thinking about some of the costumes that they have, like illegal aliens. And so they'll have like an alien face and a sombrero and the poncho and maybe some tequila in their hands and think it's funny. It's not funny. But the one that I'm thinking about that people aren't talking about as much, and you might actually engage in because you see some of your favorite celebrities doing it, is the whole cholo and chola style, which is cultural appropriation because they're not fictitious characters. Like chola style in itself is very much tied to a specific Mexican American subculture. It is not something for mockery. And so when people mimic the style of this marginalized ethnic group, it's not cool. It's cultural appropriation. And I've seen a couple people engaging in it, including my queen, not Beyonce, Rihanna. I love Beyonce, but Rihanna. Like a couple years ago, she actually dressed up as a zombie chola. And at first I thought it was cute, but then I realized like, ooh, that is, I think this is cultural appropriation. This is like similar to when like white people decide to have, ghetto parties or thug parties, and they put on baggy jeans and do-rags and backwards hats and wife beaters and gold teeth and think that it's funny to pretty much emulate Flavor Flav and say like, we're having a black party. It's not cool. And it's in the same vein. And so for those who don't know, like if you're like, think about, if you don't know what a chola kind of style looks like, and it's mostly females I see do it, but I just recently saw that Omar Epps and his wife Keisha Epps dressed up as a chola and a cholo, and I was like, I cannot like this. I cannot. Oh. So here's the historical, here's the history on the whole chola and cholo style. So the term was used by European colonizers to refer to full or mixed indigenous populations in South and Central America. So it was a term used by the colonizers. It was a term used by the colonizers to pretty much categorize people that had indigenous blood in them, that had native blood in them, that are in Central and South America. In the 1960s, just like the word nigger, and not the ER, but with the A, just like the word nigger, the word was reclaimed by working class Mexican Americans, actually. So they reclaimed the word, even though, if European colonizers are using it to differentiate between those who are mixed indigenous blood and those who are European blood or something else blood, it's a problem. And it's not used in an endearing way, especially if they didn't use the term to categorize themselves or to define themselves. That is a problem. That is the colonizer using their power and privilege to subhumanize or dehumanize this group of people. But in the 1960s, they reclaimed it, and the Chicano power movement also reclaimed it as a way to flip and empower a term that had historically been used to denigrate them. So in itself, again, like I said, just don't do it. It's not a good look. It's the same thing, but I've seen a lot of Black people engaging in it. And we know when we see white people engaging in it, it's an automatic hell the fuck no, like you can't do it. But then like when you see Black people and other people of color engaging in it, it's like, you also engaging in cultural appropriation and doing something that's racist. So don't. It's not cool. People aren't talking about it as much. And I did hear that when I was looking it up that Rihanna did receive some flack about dressing up as the zombie chola. And she did apologize. She did say she didn't realize, and she apologized. And she hasn't done it since. So with that, I want to give you a quick checklist so that you can make sure that your costume is not racist, and that your coworkers' costumes aren't racist, and that your children's costumes aren't racist, and that your neighbors' costumes aren't racist. And if they are, then you can check them on it and be like, hey, I have a checklist to help you realize that you shouldn't be wearing this shit. So I got this checklist from Hampshire College. And so the main question is my costume racist? And so if you have yes to any of these, then your costume is racist. So here are the questions. I'm going to read them. Does my costume represent a culture that's not my own? If you said yes, it's racist. Does my costume reduce cultural differences to jokes or stereotypes? If you said yes, costume is racist. Does my costume packaging, so you went to Spirit of Halloween, you went to Party City, you bought it from Amazon, and it includes the words traditional, ethnic, colonial, cultural, authentic, ghetto, or tribal? That shit is racist. If you said yes, does my costume perpetuate stereotypes, misinformation, or historical and cultural inaccuracies? If you wearing if you said yes, it's racist. Is my costume supposed to be funny? Is the humor based on making fun of real people, human traits, or cultures? If you said yes, it's racist. And lastly, would I be embarrassed or ashamed if someone from the group I'm portraying saw me wearing this? If you said yes, if someone stepped to you, if someone spit in your face, if someone's giving you a dirty look, if someone wants to punch you in the face because you're wearing something of their culture, but it's not in the appropriate context, then yes, your costume is racist. If someone calls you out on that shit and points out how you're wrong and how you don't even know the history of the group, your shit is racist. And with that, I'm done with this. I just want to leave you off before I end this with just some parting words. So remember, Halloween costumes should be scary, inventive, fun, but not racist or of another person's culture. It's important not just to make sure that you're not engaging in cultural appropriation, but also to make sure that your neighbors, your friends, your kids, anybody that you see is not also engaging in cultural appropriation. And so if you see something, you better say something. And with that, I'm done with this special bonus episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found it useful and entertaining and are able to use some of the tips and information that I looked up for you guys so you wouldn't have to. And I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. If you celebrate it, I hope you are safe. I hope you are not, you're having fun. And I hope you do not engage in cultural appropriation or racist fuckery. Okay, people? Be blessed and safe. And I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Bye.